If you've noticed when you're eating that you're not actually sure whether you're hungry or not, but maybe you are aware of things like eating out of habit, or perhaps actually letting yourself get ravenously hungry before you eat, then I just want you to know you're not alone with that, and it's a really normal way to eat when you've become disconnected through dieting. So in this video I'm going to talk a bit more about the role of hunger in dieting, and then I'm going to talk about the role of hunger in intuitive eating, and then I'm going to share some common signs of hunger that you can start to practice with today, with a gentle step to move you forwards towards trusting your body again around food. And if you're not sure who I am, my name's Georgina Wright. I'm an intuitive eating counsellor and former physiotherapist. I spent years and years, decades, hating my body and trying to punish it really through lots and lots of diets that just left me with no end of problems with my eating and my relationship to food and body, namely binge eating, overeating, emotional eating, food obsession, the list goes on. And the answer for me was in intuitive eating. So once I discovered the intuitive eating framework, it transformed my life actually, as well as my health. So my aim with these videos is to help you and give you hope that you can do exactly the same. So if we look at the role of dieting and hunger, and if you think back to diets that you've been on, or maybe you're on a diet right now, the main aim of the diets is to tell you what to eat, how to eat, when to eat, what time to eat, and it just revolves around a whole load of rules, and that makes them really hard to stick to, because we're not actually listening to anything within our own body or our own wisdom or our physiology. We're just steadfastly working towards these rules that have been created that 95% of the time are just impossible to follow, and that's why diets fail. It's really not you that's broken, it's the whole diet culture that we're in that's causing real harm. And the role that hunger has in intuitive eating is the understanding that we're all born with physiological hunger and fullness cues intact. And one of the earliest examples you'll see of natural intuitive eating is in toddlers. So if you put them in an environment with free access to food, normally what happens is that they'll just eat when they're hungry and stop when they're full naturally, and then they may go back, depending on how long the period of time is, and then graze on some food as a snack. And that's them just listening to their inbuilt cues. Having said that, that doesn't mean that intuitive eating is a hunger and fullness diet in any way, but just to give you an example really of how wise our body is when we just leave it alone and let it get on with its job. And then what happens with dieting again is that because we ignore all those cues, we're just not in touch with hunger or in touch with fullness. And we try and control our intake and generally make it the same every day, regardless of what's going on in our life or our lifestyles. So examples of that would be, depending on how much activity you do, changes how much you need to take in fuel-wise. Age can affect that, hormones can affect that. There's so many different factors. And intuitive eating recognises that, and so when we lean into supporting ourselves through really listening to these inbuilt hunger and fullness cues, then our body regulates what we need each day without us having to overthink it, without us having to count calories or macros or deal with all the guilt that goes with not sticking to that diet. And then just another couple of things that I think are helpful for you to know, and again this is coming from the intuitive eating framework and all the evidence and all the research and all the papers that go with it, is like the average filling and emptying capacity of the human stomach is around 2 to 6 hours, depending on whether you fueled yourself with a meal or a snack. So that's quite a good reference point, just so you sort of know maybe what an average, management of your hunger and fullness would be. And then if you were looking to sort of reconnect these cues, like how long does it take? So the average time is, it can be as quick as just a few days to start noticing hunger again, and fullness takes a little bit longer, and I'll cover that in another video. So yeah, a few days, sometimes a few weeks, if you were dealing with a more complex relationship with food, and that could be where you're moving more into the realms of diagnosed eating disorders, so things like anorexia, bulimia, binge eating disorder and things like that, that can take longer. For good reason, because there's a lot more to heal around that, and healing is possible. And if that is you, that you're sort of thinking, yes, I sort of resonate with that, then the next step you can take is to definitely go and work with a healthcare provider, and specifically someone that specialises in intuitive eating. There's a wealth of expert health professionals that specialise in eating disorders with intuitive eating, and they will be able to help you to move forwards, you know, with great care as well. So I'll just pop a link down below if that's you and you want to sort of go and have a look and take that further. So if we move on to a gentle practice that you can start today, the first thing to consider is, what are the actual signs of hunger that you can look out for? And you might think that's really obvious, or you might be sat there thinking, actually, I've totally lost touch with hunger and I just really don't know what signs there would be. So the most obvious one is that grumbling, growling, empty stomach. But if you like I was when I was struggling with food many years ago at its worst, I would never let myself get hungry. I was always full, so I never got any signs of hunger really until I did this work, because I was just constantly on and off diets, but rarely would I let myself get hungry. So just to share an example really of how it can differ for people. But yeah, your first signs of hunger would be that empty stomach, and it can be other signs like maybe headache, increased thoughts of food, feeling tired, feeling irritable. Some people describe a bit of a physical sensation in the throat for them that signals hunger. Just a general decreased loss of concentration, that can be a sign of hunger. Nausea, that can also be a sign of hunger. So they're really varied. And they can be unique to you, and there's no right or wrong either in any of the cues. It's just getting in touch with sort of some common cues that you can begin to explore, and then you might find some unique ones along the way. And the best way to practice this is definitely with consistency and regularly. The more regularly you practice any technique, the easier it will be to access that result. And if you sort of stop and start with it, then it can be difficult to really get into a nice rhythm with it. But having said that, you're welcome to go at a pace that suits you. It's really important with any work in intuitive eating that you come to it with readiness for yourself, and that you get to decide what that readiness is and what that next action is that feels right for you to take. So you could start with one meal a day or one snack with this practice. If you wanted to, you could do more practices during the day with another meal or another snack, or just stick to the one. That's absolutely fine. So once you've explored what's there, and you might come back and say, I haven't got any signs of hunger, I just can't, there doesn't seem to be anything there. That's absolutely fine, and it's still okay to eat. So we're not eating just because we're not hungry. When we first start healing our relationship with food, it's just really important that we make peace with everything, and that if we want to eat, that we're giving ourselves that permission to eat. So you're welcome to eat if you don't detect any hunger. That's absolutely fine. And then what you would want to then do to add on to this hunger awareness is use in intuitive eating what we call the hunger discovery scale, and it's a scale from 0 to 10 that just helps us gauge what our hunger and fullness level is. So 0 is ravenous hunger, and that's usually the level of hunger where you can't really control the volume of food that you eat, because it's your body's primal response to being deprived of food. So you might have examples, maybe if you think about that, of when it's happened before and you might have thought you just lost control of your eating, or you might have felt guilty, why can't I have more willpower? If you are somebody that's let yourself get ravenously hungry, so you're at a 0 or a 1 on that hunger discovery scale, then that will have triggered your primal hunger reflex, which will have then driven you to have eaten maybe a larger volume of food than you planned to because of that response. So that's your 0 to 1. 5 is neutral, so neither hungry or full. And then 10 is overly full, feeling really stuffed, maybe feeling a bit queasy, uncomfortably full, very uncomfortable. And ideally, if we were aiming for something with this practice, Usually around a 3 or a 4 out of 10 is sort of comfortable and increasing hunger, and that is an ideal time to eat. So just something to sort of bear in mind for you when you're doing this practice. But if you're not 3 or 4, it's still fine to eat. You know, we're just getting curious really about where our body is at the moment, and then having an idea of what we're actually aiming for, whether that takes us days, weeks or months. It doesn't matter. The timeline of intuitive eating doesn't matter. It's just the constant continuous reflection really, and kindness and compassion that's the key. And then the timeline dissolves, because if you're practicing compassion and kindness on a regular basis, you don't need to be at a certain place with intuitive eating at a certain time scale, if you see what I mean. If you didn't really want to use numbers, if that's a bit triggering for you from past dieting, then you can just use a little bit more of a gentle approach, and that is looking at your hunger as a description. So you could either, so there's 3 statements. So neutral is neither hungry or full, and then you've got comfortable hunger and you've got uncomfortable hunger. So if that feels better for you, then you can do that, and you'll be able to see in the little sort of diagram that I've put up those 2 examples of those 2 scales. So I hope you found that video helpful today, and I'd love to hear from you if you are going to explore this, and do let me know in the comments or send me an email to let me know how you're getting on. And to round up the video today, I've created what I think is a really lovely free guide for you, that's all about this, all about trusting your cues. So it talks you through again what hunger is all about in intuitive eating. It's got the 2 different scales in there, and some gentle actions like I've gone through today in the video that you can take. So if you'd like to grab a copy of that, if you just click the link down below, then it'll take you through to the download for it. And I will look forward to seeing you in the next video.